Every morning across the world, millions of seniors crack 2 eggs into a pan, stir them with care, and sit down believing they are doing something kind for their hearts. The plate looks simple, wholesome, full of promise. But for many people over 60 living with stiff, narrowed arteries, that same sunny breakfast is quietly feeding a problem deep inside the blood vessels. The danger is not the farm, the shell color, or how fresh the egg is. It is the way a damaged circulation system and a changed gut turn part of that yolk into a chemical that pushes plaque along faster. If your doctor has ever mentioned blockages, stents, poor circulation, or high risk, I want you to listen closely as we rethink breakfast from the inside out. When you first heard that eggs might be a problem for the heart, you may have felt a mix of confusion and resistance. How could something so familiar, so often recommended, be working against you? For years, health messages held up eggs as a smart choice. Choose protein, not pastries. Start your day with something that will stick with you. Many seniors did exactly that. They swapped sugary breakfast foods for scrambled or boiled eggs, felt pleasantly full, and believed they were doing the right thing. And for a long time, for many people, that seemed true enough. But bodies do not stay frozen in time. After 50 and 60, the inside of your arteries slowly changes. Small patches of plaque begin to build in places where the inner lining has been irritated. Blood pressure creeps upward. Cholesterol numbers edge past the range they once lived in. Maybe you were told you have some narrowing in the neck arteries, or the vessels around your heart look a bit stiff. Perhaps you have already had a stent, a bypass, or a warning scare. In this setting, breakfast is no longer just about satisfying hunger. Every meal either adds to the pressure on your arteries or eases it. Doctors use long names like atherosclerosis and cardiovascular disease, but for you, it is much simpler. It is the fear of another hospital stay, the hope of seeing grandchildren grow without being sidelined by another heart event. It is the wish to climb stairs without chest tightness and to walk without worrying that any strange pain could be serious. When your doctor talks about plaque, poor circulation, or the need to keep your numbers under control, they are pointing to a very real situation. Your pipes are not brand new. This is why eggs become a different story after a certain point. It is not that they suddenly turn poisonous for everyone. It is that the context has changed. In a body with flexible, clean arteries, the choline and cholesterol in egg yolks move through a system that can handle them. In a body with stiffened, narrowed vessels and a gut altered by years of medications and processed foods, the same nutrients can be turned into something far more damaging. Understanding that you are no longer eating like a 25-year-old and that your arteries no longer respond like they once did is the first step in deciding whether your daily eggs are still on your side or quietly working against you. If you think back over the last few years, you may already see hints of this story in your own life. Perhaps climbing a hill that once felt effortless now leaves you stopping to catch your breath. Maybe your doctor has adjusted your blood pressure medicine more than once or suggested a stress test to be safe. You might have noticed new pills appearing in your weekly box, each one aimed at controlling numbers on a chart that reflect what is happening inside your arteries. None of these changes mean you have failed. They simply mean your body has a history now, a record written into your blood vessels. That history is precisely why it matters to look again at which foods are truly helping you and which ones are only pretending to be harmless. To see why eggs can become such a problem in older, already damaged arteries, we have to peek inside a world you cannot see, the one inside your gut. Lining your intestines are trillions of tiny organisms, mostly bacteria, that help break down food, make certain vitamins, and keep the immune system informed. Together, they form your microbiome, an inner garden that looks very different at 70 than it did at 30. Years of antibiotic use, illness, stress, sugar, and processed foods slowly shift which species thrive and which fade away. When you eat an egg, the nutrient that deserves the most attention is choline, which is found in high amounts in the yolk. Choline itself is not automatically harmful. Your body uses it for cell membranes and brain function. But in many seniors with hardened arteries, the dominant bacteria in the gut have changed their behavior. Instead of letting choline quietly support healthy tissue, they grab it and strip it down into a gas called TMA. That gas travels straight to the liver, where it is converted into a compound named TMAO. You never taste it. You do not feel it moving. But from that moment on, it is riding along in your bloodstream with every heartbeat. What does TMAO actually do? Think of the inner wall of your artery as a once smooth riverbank that now has rough places where plaque has started to cling. TMAO acts like a kind of invisible glue. It makes those rough patches stickier, encouraging more cholesterol and inflammatory cells to pile on. It can make platelets, the little cells that form clots, more likely to clump together. Over time, this combination means that a plaque that might have stayed small now has help growing bigger and more dangerous. The river narrows. The flow becomes more turbulent. The risk of a serious blockage rises. The hardest part is that there is no warning light on your plate that says this meal will increase TMAO. You can be eating what looks like a clean, simple breakfast and still be feeding that plaque-friendly chemistry. And if you already have a history of heart disease, strokes, or significant plaque, your margin for error is thin. Continuing to send daily deliveries of choline into a system that eagerly turns it into TMAO is like sprinkling dry leaves onto a fire you are trying to control. 1 or 2 may not matter. A steady stream, day after day, absolutely does. Researchers can now even measure TMAO in the blood, and what they see paints a consistent picture. People with the highest levels tend to have the most aggressive plaque and the greatest risk of future heart events. Those with lower levels, even when they share the same age and similar cholesterol numbers, often do better over time. This does not mean you need to live in fear of a single food. It does mean that when you know your arteries are already under strain, continuing to eat the foods that push TMAO higher every day is like walking toward a cliff you can already see on the horizon. Turning your steps even slightly now can change where you end up 5 or 10 years from today. When people first hear about TMAO and egg yolks, a very natural reaction is to look for a safer version of the same breakfast. Maybe free-range eggs are better, they think. Or perhaps organic, omega-3 enriched, or bought straight from a local farm will solve the problem. It feels comforting to believe that if you just spend a little more or choose a nicer label, the risk will disappear. Unfortunately, that is not how chemistry works inside the body. No matter where the egg came from, the yolk still carries choline. The chickens may have been treated more kindly, the feed may have been cleaner, the shell may look prettier, but your gut bacteria do not check the carton before they get to work. Once that choline reaches a microbiome that is primed to make TMA, the same chain reaction begins. TMA is produced, the liver turns it into TMAO, and your bloodstream carries it along to the very arteries you are trying to protect. Whether the egg cost a little or a lot does not change what happens once it is inside you. A simple picture can help. Imagine a metal pipe in your basement that has developed several cracks. Every time you run water, a fine spray leaks out and slowly damages the floor. You might decide to upgrade your water source, switching from ordinary tap water to the most expensive bottled water you can find. The liquid is purer, the bottle is prettier, but every time you pour it into that same cracked pipe, the leak continues. The problem was never just the water. It was the pipe. In your body, the cracked pipe is the combination of damaged artery walls and a gut environment trained by years of illness and diet. Better eggs do not fix those cracks. At a certain stage of heart disease, the question is no longer how to find the perfect egg. It is whether continuing to deliver egg yolk choline to a system that has already shown it will turn that choline into TMAO is a risk you are still willing to take. When the stakes are your next heart scan, your next stress test, or your ability to stay active and independent, holding on to eggs out of habit or marketing promises starts to look less like a small preference and more like an unnecessary gamble. It is completely understandable to feel frustrated when you first hear this. You followed the messages that were popular at the time. You chose eggs instead of pastries, cooked at home instead of eating fast food, and perhaps even paid more for brands that promised better health. Now it can feel as if the rules have changed in the middle of the game. But in reality, your body has changed, not the basic biology. What was a tolerable choice when your arteries were young and flexible may not be a safe choice now that they carry scars. Recognizing this is not an admission of failure. It is a sign of wisdom. It says, I am willing to adjust as my body changes, rather than pretending I am still 25. At this point, you might be thinking, all right, I understand the risk, but what about my protein? After all, every doctor, therapist, and trusted health source seems to agree on one thing. After 60, you cannot afford to skimp on protein. Muscles thin more quickly. Bones lose density. Without enough protein, everyday tasks become harder, balance declines, and the risk of falls climbs sharply. It is completely reasonable to worry that if you give up your morning eggs, you will be left weak, hungry, or both. Eggs feel like the perfect answer because they are familiar and easy. You can cook them with your eyes half closed. They work for one person or two. They are easy to flavor with a little salt, pepper, and butter. For many seniors, eggs are not just food. They are a morning ritual tied to memories of family, work days, and comfort. So when someone suggests that eggs may no longer be your friend, it can feel like an attack on more than just a menu choice. It can feel like losing a small piece of your routine and identity. The truth is, your need for protein is very real, but the idea that eggs are the only simple way to get it is not. There is nothing magical in an egg that a person with hardened arteries cannot find elsewhere. What matters is that the protein you choose does two things at once. It must feed your muscles, and it must avoid feeding the chemistry that harms your arteries. A food that gives you strength while quietly encouraging plaque is a poor bargain once you already carry a history of heart disease. Think about the difference between a heater that keeps your home warm and a heater that leaks smoke into the room at the same time. Yes, both make you feel cozy, but one does so at a hidden cost. The other does not. In the same way, some protein sources support both your muscles and your blood vessels. Others support one while undermining the other. Your task after 60, especially with known artery disease, is to favor the proteins that warm the house without filling it with fumes. Once you accept that the habit of eating eggs is separate from the need for protein, your mind becomes much more open to a breakfast that loves both your heart and your muscles. You might also worry that plant-based proteins will not feel as satisfying or will leave you hungry by mid-morning. That is a reasonable fear if your only picture of these foods comes from a small side dish on a restaurant plate. In reality, when beans, lentils, and chickpeas are given center stage, combined with healthy fats like avocado or olive oil and paired with whole grains, they create meals that stick with you just as well as eggs do, often with more stable blood sugar. The goal is not to nibble on a few lonely beans and call it breakfast. It is to build a full, warm, savory bowl that feels generous, not restrictive. When you approach these foods with the same care you once gave your favorite egg recipe, they repay you with both comfort and protection. This is where a quiet group of foods earns a fresh look: the lentils, black beans, and chickpeas that may already be sitting on your pantry shelf. At first glance, they do not seem exciting. They do not sizzle in a pan the way eggs do. They do not appear on glossy breakfast ads. But inside an older body with hardened arteries, they often behave far more kindly than a daily plate of yolks. First, legumes deliver a steady stream of plant-based protein without the same heavy load of choline that drives TMAO production in vulnerable guts. Half a cup of cooked beans or lentils can provide 10 to 15 grams of protein, enough to anchor a morning meal, especially when paired with a slice of whole grain toast or a spoon of yogurt if you tolerate dairy. Your muscles receive the amino acids they need to repair and stay strong. But your bacteria are not handed the same raw material for that harmful chemical cascade. Second, beans and lentils arrive wrapped in soluble fiber, a special kind of fiber that turns almost gel-like as it travels through your intestines. That gel acts like a sponge and a gentle brush. It binds to cholesterol and certain fats, trapping them in its soft net so they can leave your body in waste instead of lodging in your artery walls. While eggs tend to deliver more cholesterol to the system, legumes help escort some of it out. Over months and years, that difference adds up. Third, these fibers are the favorite food of a much friendlier group of gut bacteria. When you eat beans regularly, you are quietly replanting that inner garden. The microbes that thrive on legume fibers often produce anti-inflammatory compounds that soothe the gut lining and may help calm some of the chronic inflammation linked with heart disease. As those species expand, they compete with and crowd out the bacteria that were so eager to turn choline into TMAO. You are not only removing a trigger, you are training your inner helpers to behave differently. Seen this way, a bowl of black beans, a scoop of lentils, or a hearty portion of chickpeas is not a downgrade from eggs. It is a deliberate upgrade for a body that needs both strength and protection. These foods nourish your muscles, support healthier cholesterol levels, and encourage a more balanced gut, all without pouring fuel onto the fire smoldering in your arteries. Some seniors hesitate to eat more beans because they worry about gas or digestive upset. This concern is real, but it can usually be managed with patience and a few simple tricks. Start with small portions, a few spoonfuls at a time, and increase slowly so your system can adjust. Rinse canned beans thoroughly, or soak dry beans overnight and discard the soaking water before cooking. Pair them with herbs like ginger, cumin, or fennel, which many people find helpful for comfort. Over a few weeks, most bodies adapt, and what felt heavy at first becomes easy and normal. When you remember what is at stake, a short period of adjustment is a small price to pay for food that is actively working on your side. Of course, none of this matters if change feels too complicated at 7 in the morning. It is one thing to understand the science in theory, and another to stand in your kitchen, half awake, wondering what to put on the stove. That is why your new plan has to be simple, repeatable, and kind to your real life, not just impressive on paper. Start small. For the first week, do not promise yourself perfection. Instead, choose 3 or 4 mornings to practice an egg-free, heart-friendly breakfast on purpose. On those days, decide in advance what you will make so you are not left staring into the refrigerator with no ideas. Maybe Monday is your black bean bowl day. Keep a can of low-sodium black beans in the pantry. Rinse half a cup, warm them gently in a pan with a spoon of salsa or chopped tomato, then add a slice of avocado and a sprinkle of herbs. You will have a warm, savory dish that fills your stomach, feeds your muscles, and leaves your arteries in peace. Another morning could belong to lentil porridge. Red lentils cook quickly and soften into a creamy texture. Add a small handful to a pot with water or vegetable broth. Simmer until they break down, and stir in turmeric, black pepper, and a pinch of salt if your doctor allows it. The result looks like thick oatmeal but tastes comforting and savory. For a different day, try a simple chickpea scramble. Drain and rinse canned chickpeas, then mash them lightly in a pan with onions, peppers, and a drizzle of olive oil. Season with garlic and a spoon of nutritional yeast if you enjoy that gentle cheesy flavor. Spoon the mixture onto whole grain toast and notice how similar the routine feels to your old egg breakfast, even though the ingredients now protect your heart instead of challenging it. As you experiment, pay attention to more than just taste. Notice how your stomach feels an hour later, whether your energy is steadier through the morning, and whether there is a quiet sense of relief knowing your breakfast is no longer feeding that harmful chemistry. If you live with family, invite them to taste along. Often the people around you are also carrying risk they have never named. By making this change out in the open, you model a different kind of strength. One that puts long-term health ahead of short-term habit. Little by little, as your hands reach for the beans more often and the egg carton less, your new breakfast will stop feeling strange. It will simply be the way you start a day devoted to protecting the heart that has worked so hard for you. As you make these shifts, keep your team in the loop. Let your doctor know you are cutting back on eggs and leaning into beans and lentils. Ask whether it makes sense to repeat your cholesterol tests after a few months. Seeing those numbers respond can be motivating and will reassure you that these daily choices are making a difference. If any part of this message made something inside you pause, treat that feeling as a quiet warning. You have spent decades taking care of others. Now your heart is asking you to take one simple step for yourself. For the next 7 mornings, choose beans, lentils, or chickpeas in place of eggs at least 4 times. Circle those days on a calendar. Notice how your energy, digestion, and peace of mind change when you sit down to a breakfast that truly supports your arteries. Share in the comments which swap you will try first so others see they are not alone. If you want more clear, respectful guidance made for seniors who still want many strong years ahead, subscribe and stay with this channel. Your heart has carried you this far. Now you can choose to carry it more wisely, one breakfast at a time. You deserve that care.